Call me old-fashioned, but I really think being able to move freely and without pain should be a top priority for pretty much anybody. As we get older, we start to collect aches and pains. We might have knee pain or backache that makes it difficult for us to perform the movements that we used to have no problem with when we were younger. But even people who would consider themselves otherwise healthy and in good shape can struggle with simple things like getting into a deep squat with their heels flat on the floor. Maybe you can't even drop down onto one side. You're literally locked up and frozen. Just think how liberating and freeing it would feel to be able to easily drop into these positions and move around however you like. But so many people assume that this is off the table as we get older, and so many young people think it's not something they need to worry about. So there's a kind of ironic dichotomy there. But the truth is that using smart mobility training in your workouts can restore a lot of healthy movement relatively quickly. And if you're younger, then including it now will ensure that you don't have these issues in the first place. Sure, there are some things you're not coming back from, and I highly recommend that if you have any chronic problems, that you discuss it with a professional. But for the most part, many of the issues we think are permanent are just a matter of finding the right workout. This is a journey I've been on for the last several years, and right now I'm moving and feeling like I did when I was much younger, thanks to just some simple fixes. So in this video, I'm going to share with you the concepts that you need to know to apply to your mobility training to get the maximum results. What this looks like precisely is going to vary from person to person, but these are the concepts that can help so many people to move freely and without pain. And at the same time, I will also be sharing some specific exercises you can do to fix common issues you might be experiencing. But first, I want to take a moment to address the perplexing fact that so many people simply write off mobility training as being useful or necessary at all. While the internet is full of people doing amazing things like 500-pound deadlifts, the truth is that many of us simply struggle to move without pain. And in fact, even some of the people doing those crazy feats struggle to move without pain. And I myself have struggled with back pain, knee pain, ankle pain, you name it. Even if there's no pain, a lot of people struggle to move with a full range of motion. That is to say, they struggle to squat deep with their heels on the floor, or they struggle to get into a Cossack squat. So why focus so much on lifting more and more in one exercise when you're so restricted in other areas that you can hardly move? And this is why I really disagree when fitness YouTubers say you don't need mobility training. I'd go as far as to argue that the average person would benefit more from mobility training than any other kind of training. And it doesn't have to be gymnastic level, just enough to get them moving freely and without pain, to let them tie their laces without putting their back out. And if you take this further, then it can lead to really cool stunts and feats, even increase your max lifts. So why do people write off mobility training in the first place? Well, partly it's because it feels like it isn't doing anything a lot of the time. Partly because it's not fun, and partly because it can actually cause pain and discomfort in some cases. But these are all issues with how you're training, not the moves themselves. And Instagram, YouTube and TikTok are once again partly to blame. See, mobility training isn't about doing back bends and curling yourself into a pretzel. It's about repeating boring movements, slowly, over and over again. You have to believe in the process and not try to rush it. But you have to do it right. The problem is that when you're restricted in your movement, you likely have bad movement patterns. These can develop from performing the same movements over and over at the expense of others, from being in the same position for hours at a time, or from compensating for injuries and pain. This can then lead to muscle imbalances, where one muscle group is significantly stronger than the other, tight fascia, the connective tissue that runs between, through and around the muscles, or even poor neural networks, as you literally forget how to move one part of your body without also moving another. Let's take my back as an example. I had tight, weak hip flexors, so I needed to do pike pulses and leg sweeps. Here you raise the legs while seated to strengthen the hip flexor muscles. This can address a lot of lower back pain, by the way, especially combined with hip flexor stretches. I diligently did the exercise and raised my legs pretty high, but problem was I wasn't actually engaging my hips as much as I should have been because I was rounding my lower back and using my abs instead. The fix was to put my back against a wall and perform the movement that way, drastically reducing my range of motion, but also successfully isolating the muscle in question, teaching myself once again to flex the hips without also rounding the back. And over time, this would be enough to teach me to move it on its own again. That's the aim of the game with these kinds of fixes, and what you might be doing wrong. It doesn't matter if you're technically doing a full range of motion, You definitely don't want to cheat or to compensate to get there. Take your ego out of it and isolate the movement. It might seem boring, but the results are anything but. Honestly, since my back has stopped bugging me, I feel 10 years younger, and I'm thrilled at how much faster I've been learning cool skills. And the answer was just to stop trying to rush it, to slow down. Another way to think of this is the neural maps corresponding to your toes. Most of us can't individually move all of our toes because we never practice individually moving all of our toes. As such, the neural maps have become kind of wired together. Neurons that fire together, wire together. So wiggling one toe forces the others to wiggle. The way you could get around this is by holding the other toe still and practicing raising just one toe. And with time, you might eventually gain that dexterity. This is essentially what you're doing when you're trying to teach yourself to move, when you're trying to teach your hips to move without your abs crunching. Thinking about and looking after your mobility is something you can do to take care of yourself. It's going to benefit you in the long run. And something else you can do to take care of yourself in the long run is to think about your internet security and privacy. And that's where today's sponsor comes in, Incogni. So you're probably aware that companies are collecting your personal information online all of the time. Every time you tick the wrong checkbox on a form, sometimes from social media, often without your consent, these data brokers are collecting your information and then selling it on to other companies. This can result in you getting all sorts of spam and calls that you don't want. But worst of all is often there'll be data leaks, meaning that your information gets stolen by even more nefarious actors, putting you at risk of things like identity theft or other issues. Incogni is a service that will find your information in these databases and then issue removal requests, telling these companies that they need to take your data off of their lists. This is something that will be extremely difficult to do yourself, not only tracking down all of these companies with your information, but then also making sure that they actually comply. Incogni will send repeat removal requests and make sure that it's been done, and then you can also see the status and the progress of this live on the dashboard. This not only shows you the scope of the issue, but also gives you peace of mind as you literally see your data being removed from those databases. So I'm really grateful that Incogni provides this service. I'm really grateful to them for sponsoring this video. If you want to check it out for yourself, then head to the link in the description down below and then use code BIONEER at checkout and you'll get 60% off your order. Now, on with the show.
You know, we never think of ego stretching. We always think of ego lifting, lifting more than you can in order to look good or feel good, and then you injure yourself. But ego stretching, ego mobility is really just as bad. You know, if you're pushing yourself because you really want to touch the ground or you really want to do a perfect back bridge, instead of focusing on just getting a stretch, then you're going to hurt yourself. And a gentle stretch is almost always better than a forced, painful stretch. The reason for this being that when you force yourself into a stretch, you actually find yourself tensing up. And one of the reasons that we struggle to reach a full range of motion is because we're tense. You need to relax. So if you're forcing yourself and putting the pressure on, it's actually not conducive to stretching really well. So for example, if you're trying to reach down and touch the floor, then I'd recommend not even bothering trying to touch the floor. There's no need to touch the floor. Touching the floor is going to involve rounding your back a little bit, which is fine, but not if you're pushing and pushing to try and get there. So instead just focus on folding and don't even think about touching the floor. A great way I like to do this lately is with a stick. So if you grab a stick, stand it on one end, then you can kind of walk yourself down it with your hands, focusing on keeping your back leg straight. You step one leg forwards and then just feeling that stretch in the hamstring. And this is great because it's going to prevent you from rounding your lower back and really force you to tilt at the pelvis.
When you're performing a hip flexor stretch, it's really important to make sure that you square your hips. What this means is that you want to bring your left and right side level with one another, because otherwise, if you let one side drag behind, then you're not actually stretching your hip flexors, you're just rotating at the waist. So if you want to do it correctly and actually feel the stretch, it's really important you do this.
Another one for me was raising my hands above my head. You know, I tried all sorts of stretches, but again, I'd often be actually leaning backwards to cheat getting my hands over my head. You can force this by standing by a wall, but what really worked for me was using a stick and doing shoulder dislocates. Eventually at this point, you're going to have to move your arms without moving your back if you want to get into that position. So again, this isolated the movement, but it was very humbling at first, not being able to do this at all, and having to have my arms super wide to get them round at all. So again, it's not trying to force yourself to pull off positions, it's just focusing the effort on the area that feels tight. I hope some of these specific tips have helped you, but it's more about understanding how this stuff can be effective. Just performing the stretches is not enough, and pushing yourself past comfort can be dangerous. The aim is to guide yourself into correct movement patterns and to gently repeat that, to isolate the problem area if necessary. Don't move through pain. It's not exciting, but it's crucial for your overall athleticism and pain-free movement. And to those saying that weightlifting is enough, because a deep back squat will give you all the mobility you need, I challenge you to do a pistol squat. Clearly you're strong enough, so it should be no problem, right? I don't know about you, but being able to get into any position I want, being able to pull off cool moves, it seems like it should be more of a priority for my performance. And that's squats, that's a movement pattern that you actually are rehearsing in the gym. Now imagine all of those positions you're not even touching in a typical program, like getting your arms fully over your head or rotating the thoracic spine. You do need additional mobility training, and as you get older, it becomes increasingly more important. So I hope you found this video useful and interesting, guys. Let me know what you think down below. Is pain-free movement a priority in your training? And what have you done that's really helped you to achieve that? If you're interested in not just looking stronger, not just performing better in the gym, but feeling more powerful, faster, more mobile, having more endurance, then you might enjoy my ebook and training program, Super Functional Training 2.0. That's a program that aims to build all of your traits at once by taking different concepts from different training styles. There'll be a link in the description down below. Either way, guys, thank you so much for watching this one, and I'll see you next time. Bye for now.